Alrighty, here we go. Chapter 11. I'm feeling good. I had some chips and queso. Really amazing chips and queso for lunch. I am jazzed. I'm feeling good. Chapter 11. And then hopefully by the end of this, I won't have to file for Chapter 11. Ha ha ha. Oh, 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 oh. Oh my god. Here we go. Lita. Then there was the original of that most legendary of nymphets, Lolita. Who was Lolita? She was born in Hollywood of a Mexican mother and an Irish-American father on April 15, 1908. Her baptismal name was Lolita McMurray. She grew up on the wrong side of Sunset, not far from Chaplin's studio, in a low-rent bungalow. Impudent, but not clever, with a broad face and low forehead, she was backward in school. Chaplin first laid eyes on Lolita when she was 7 years old. Oh boy, 7. The year was 1915, the place a popular tear room frequented by the movie folk. Kitty's Come On In, where Mrs. McMurray, also known as Nana, worked as a waitress. Little Lolita caught Charlie's eye. She knew who he was, and she just simpered and stared. Charlie saw flimsily dressed little nuggins with bold eyes. He beckoned her over in an amusing bit of pantomime, asked her name, and soon they were both sharing tea and devil's food cake served by an observant waitress, the aforementioned Nana. Before long, Lolita was working as a child extra and appeared as a flirting angel in the heaven scene in The Kid, as a maid in the idle class. Chaplin was helpful, placing Lolita in walk-on parts. With the paychecks coming in for her little girl, Mrs. McMurray couldn't quit her job waiting on tables to devote herself full-time to the education of her daughter. Nana taught just one course, semester after semester: How to Marry a Millionaire. Dumb Dora finally caught on. Lolita at 12, 13, 14, 15, and Chicken Hawk Charlie never far away, mistily watching the bud unfold. Lolita had filled out enough to become a leading lady. Little grooming to me, but what are you going to do? It's ancient history now. Chaplin was launching the gold rush, and wouldn't Lolita be fine for the role of the dance hall girl? Chaplin thought so. Mrs. McMurray exultantly agreed. In March 1924, Lolita signed the contract, jumping up and down and piping, "Goody, goody," while pleased Nana looked on. Her daughter was underage, but not too underage, she understood, to spend time off with the boss who was coaching her. Lolita had been coached at length by Nana on the parts she could play with Mr. Chaplin. With a militant mother behind her, Lolita at 16 was suddenly star of the Chaplin studios, with her name on Edna Purviance's dressing room door refurbished to Nana's taste. In honored filmland tradition, the name had been doctored. Lolita now read Lita, and McMurray now read Gray. Gray was the color and the name of the Angora kitten Chaplin had given his young star mistress, for such she had become a short time beforehand. The kitten accompanied Lita to the Chaplin studio, as did her ambitious mother, who never missed a trick. Press releases praised the new leading lady to the skies for her talent, her beauty, her, quote, aristocratic Spanish forebears, end quote, and as the gold rush went before the cameras, Chaplin shot miles and miles of film of Lita in the dance hall scene. It was heavy sledding. In spite of Charlie's infatuation, she didn't photograph well and wouldn't take direction. Whatever Charlie saw in her, a gauche, babyish charm seemed to evaporate under the hissing clogs, and the director's tricks could not restore it. Chaplin began to feel it was the hovering presence of that determined little stage mother, Nana, who kept his bud from blossoming. For the record, I do think this is creepy. Then one wearying day... Oh, for goodness sakes, why? Why did you do this, Kenneth? Then one wearying day, I'm just going to say weary day, on the crowded dance hall set under the hot Kligs as... Kligs? What am I doing? Kligs as Lita... Oh my god. I'm keeping this all in. Then, one weary day, on the crowded dance hall set under the hot Kligs, as Lita tried tango for the umpteenth time, she grabbed her tummy and let out a yell. Thus were the assembled cast and technicians of the Gold Rush Company, including the director, informed that, Lita was pregnant. As far as Mrs. McMurray was concerned, watching on the sidelines, the happy event had been anticipated. She could now go into her act and scream for the saints in Spanish and fake a faint. Things were working out according to plan. It was time for Uncle Edmund McMurray, conveniently the gentleman was a lawyer, to see Chaplin and point out that premarital sex with an underage female was legally, statutory rape. The subsequent shotgun marriage of November 24th, 1924, provided the tabloids with their Hollywood scandal of the year. It was to be Chaplin's baptism of fire. He sought to avoid scandal, but 50 reporters stampeded across the couple as they fled across the border to Mexico, seeking a quick, anonymous ceremony. Instead, they played dusty, heat-waved hide-and-seek with badgering hordes of newsmen. There was no place to hide in the seedy town of Empalme, state of Sonora, as they entered justice of the peace wedlock with the whole world watching. Charlie Chaplin, 35, and his pregnant bride, 16. Lita's mother and uncle were there, to make sure the groom did not take a powder. Quite a story. The tabloids recorded that as the newlyweds fought their way through the posse of reporters, Chaplin looked gray. Parrying impertinent questions with his prop smile, he reached his limousine with Lita and made a getaway, scattering news hounds in the dust. While groom and nymph were border-bound, a Hearst feature writer was phoning in his exclusive on the wedding chase across the Badlands. Joining a group of friends for the wedding night train trip back to the L.A., Chaplin was heard to remark, "Well, boys, this is better than the penitentiary, but it won't last." When the headlines of Charlie and his child bride hit the nation, Lita Gray, who wore wings for a bit in The Kid, had shot miles of unusable scenes for The Gold Rush, was well known as any Hollywood star. With her pregnant marriage, however, she, quote, retired from the screen, end quote. Retirement was to offer Lita and the rest of the McMurray clan compensations. Nana was at work behind the scenes to ensure that the screen career her little girl was giving up would be replaced by something more solid. She and Uncle Ed estimated that Chaplin had assets worth $16 million. On their return to Chaplin's 40-room Beverly Hills mansion, the newlyweds were accompanied with a threshold by Nana. Accompanied across the threshold by Nana. Like a nightmare mother-in-law joke, Mrs. McMurray invited herself in and made herself at home for 2 harrowing years. Ma-in-law used the pretext that Lita was still a child and could not manage the household. The papers noted the birth of a son, Charles Spencer Chaplin Jr., on June 8, 1925, 7 months after the marriage. A second son, Sidney Earl Chaplin, was born March 30, 1926, just 9 months and 2 days later. By this time, Chaplin's home was no longer his own. The McMurray clan of Beverly Hills hillbillies had taken over, and large, rowdy drinking parties were the rule. On the night of December 1, 1926, Chaplin returned home after a difficult day's work on the circus to find a drunken circus had taken over the house. The inevitable explosion occurred, and after an exchange of wrathful words, Lita packed up the 2 babies and exited with her entourage of drunken guests and the McMurray clan. By the time Lita filed for divorce on January 10, 1927, the diabolic mother-in-law money plot had long since dawned on Chaplin. By then, it was too late. The dynamic duo relinquished their grip for a price, a cool $1 million. During those 2 years of married hell, little Lolita metamorphosed into ferocious Xanthippe, a stage managed by Nana. Chaplin's every move in the house, every exit and entrance that smacked a peccadillo, every free-thinking remark or intimate suggestion shared with his wife in bed were reported by daughter and noted down by mother in a big business ledger. Nana then turned over the evidence to Uncle Ed, the lawyer in the family. When Chaplin fled, breaking off work on the circus and fleeing to the home of Nathan Birkin, his New York attorney, all of his property was seized by the legal team headed by Uncle Ed. Chaplin suffered a nervous breakdown in New York and was treated in the Birkin home by Dr. Gustav Teich, an eminent nerve specialist. When restored to sanity, Chaplin was dismayed to learn that the entire country had been inundated by salacious reading matter distilled from his 2 years of married hell. Printed in pamphlet form, 42 pages long, titled Complaint by Lita Gray, the spicy little item that had all the sheiks and shebas buzzing was nothing other than a transcription of Lita Gray Chaplin's Bill of Divorcement from Charles Spencer Chaplin. This had been leaked to a clandestine scandal press by Lita's lawyers at the moment the petition was filed. This smear job sold tens of thousands of copies at a quarter each in a few weeks. Sprinkled through the legalese was a Latin term, fellatio, that had quite a few flappers heading for a dictionary. It seems Mrs. Chaplin did not want to perform this abnormal, against nature, perverted, degenerate, and indecent act, as described by Lita's lawyers, while Chaplin encouraged her, "Relax, dear, all married people do it." I feel bad that I'm smiling and laughing at this description, but it's like, this is like a kid. Oh my god, okay, well, we gotta keep going here. According to the complaint, from the time she became intimate with him, quote, the respondent never had marital relations with the plaintiff in the manner that is usual between husband and wife, end quote. Now this rather begs the question of how she managed to conceive. During the divorce proceedings, the 2 baby boys were brandished before judge and photographers in a great display of motherly love. The grievances against Chaplin enumerated in the complaint came under 5 principal headings. 1. The plaintiff was seduced by the respondent. 2. The respondent requested the plaintiff to submit to an abortion when the condition of conception was confirmed. 3. The respondent did not consent to marry the plaintiff except after being constrained and forced to do so, and then with the reservation of the intention of divorce. 4. To precipitate the divorce, the respondent subjected the plaintiff to a calculated plan of cruel and inhuman treatment. 5. The merits of these claims is proven by the immorality of everyday conversation of Charles Chaplin, by his theories concerning the most sacred subjects, which he holds in contempt. In illustration of the fifth charge, Lita cited several conversations in which Chaplin made light of the institutions of marriage and the sex laws of the state of California. In his persistent effort to undermine and corrupt her moral impulses, to demoralize her rules of decency, Chaplin even read Lita passages from immoral literature, such as Lady Chatterley's Lover. Another effort at enlightenment proved equally unacceptable. Quote, whereas 4 months before the separation of the plaintiff and the respondent suggested that a young girl who had the reputation of performing acts of sexual perversity, oh God, spend the evening at their home, and the respondent told the plaintiff that they could have some fun together, end quote. When she nixed this proposal, she testified that Chaplin, exasperated, shouted at her, just you wait, I'll blow my top one of these days and I'll kill you. For this part, Chaplin issued the following statement to the press. I married Lita Gray because I loved her, and like many other foolish men, I loved her more when she wronged me, and I'm afraid I still love her. I was stunned and ready for suicide that day when she told me that she didn't love me, but that we must marry. Lita's mother often suggested to me that I marry Lita, and I said I would love to only if we could have children. I thought I was incapable of fatherhood, to be honest. Her mother deliberately and continuously put Lita in my path. She encouraged our relations, end quote. Not all press reaction was against Chaplin. H.L. Mencken commented in the Baltimore Sun, quote, the very morons who worshipped Charlie Chaplin 6 weeks ago now prepare to dance around the stake while he is burned. He is learning something of the psychology of the mob. A public trial involving sexual accusations is made a carnival everywhere in the United States, end quote. Lita's clique sensed a turn of the tide in favor of Chaplin, so decided to play their trump. They threatened to name in court 5 prominent motion picture actresses with whom Chaplin had been intimate during his marriage. Well, that did it. To prevent the names of these actresses being dragged into the case, particularly that of Marion Davies, who had offered Chaplin refuge at Ocean House on numerous nights when things got too rough at home, Chaplin capitulated. A cash settlement was agreed upon, and Lita changed her sensational complaint to a single charge of cruelty. On August 22, 1927, after acting on the stand for 20 minutes, Lita was awarded a $625,000 settlement. A shaken Chaplin returned to Hollywood to resume work on the circus, interrupted for a year by the litigation. He was a bachelor once more, but an embittered clown. He confided to his cameraman, Raleigh Totherhoe, that's a name, Raleigh Totherhoe, what I've been through has aged me 10 years. To resume his role, it was necessary for Chaplin to dye his hair black. Like the survivor of the Maelstrom, his encounter with Lita had turned his hair white. It was only natural that Lita should split her bounty with the manager of the show, Nana. And that is the end of that chapter. Folks, I just want to say that while this particular book was written for entertainment purposes, and a lot of these accounts were proven to be exaggerated over the years, now I don't know if this particular account was exaggerated or did actually happen, and obviously this was a long time ago. I wasn't alive when this happened. I will just end the note on this very quickly, and I don't want to sound like I'm virtue signaling, so I'll just be sincere. If you were sexually assaulted, whether as a child or as an adult, don't be afraid to come forward and talk about it. And if you know somebody that also was victimized in some way, shape, or form, encourage them to do so, be there for them. But of course, at the end of the day, it's their choice. I'll just end this on that because while there's been a lot of stories about child exploitation in the entertainment industry, and I've heard plenty of accounts of it, I don't know if this is a true or false case of it, but either way, you as a human being who's listening to this, go out and seek the justice that you ultimately are owed. Otherwise, thank you again for listening.